Hey there guys, this is going to be the follow-up to the last video where I made the gate for this future goat enclosure, and from what you can see behind me it has made a little bit of progress, but it's certainly far from being finished, and that is my aim in this video, to finish this fence to where it could potentially hold in a goat. I know everyone says if you can throw water at it and the water gets through, the goat's going to get through. But you know what? All I can do is my best. So in this video, I'm going to show you how I lay out my fence lines with string lines, auger the holes, mix the concrete, basically how I used all of the scrap steel from the old movie theater to make the fence portion of this, and I'll finish it all out by adding the horse panels, and hopefully it's going to be a pretty nice looking fence by the end of it. And before I get started, I do want to say thank you to the Home Depot Perspective and Ryobi Power Tools for sponsoring this video. As you guys have seen in so many of my videos, I've been using Ryobi tools forever, and I love shopping at Home Depot. So I just want to say thank you to them, and now we will get to the fencing project. Okay, so the first step I usually take when I'm getting ready for projects like this, whether I'm going to be pouring concrete, laying block, or in this case setting up a fence, is to stake out a couple of string lines and identify the corners and the general area of where I'm going to be putting my post holes. And you can see I've got one string line going here and one exactly perpendicular. And the way I get those exactly 90 degrees is just to use the 3-4-5 method. So I measure out 3 foot from the intersection of those two lines. So I have 3 foot on one side, 4 foot on the other, and then I make sure the diagonal portion is 5 foot, and that'll equal an exact 90-degree angle. And if you're in Europe and you use metric, just do 30 centimeters, 40 centimeters, and 50. So it's the same principle. So anyway, this is my corner post of this fence. I set it up a couple of days ago just so that I could be able to run a string line towards the top, and this would be all cured in place. So what I'll do now, I'll show you drilling or augering the holes for the rest of the fence posts. I will fill them with concrete, show you how I do that, and then I will add all of the top pieces and show you that string line process when I'm ready for it. And if you're wondering about the background noise, that was just the chickens working on some post holes for me. And the problem is they need to go that way. One of the last things I do just before my hole is completely filled up is I just get some scrap wire. In this case, this is just chicken wire, and I'm going to kind of curl it up and wrap it around where it'll be about 2 inches under the top of this concrete, and that'll just keep it from cracking and separating, especially since this is kind of an odd shape with this angle iron. And after that, I'll just kind of pat it down, rough it out, and that'll be it. And the last thing I do after I added concrete over that wire is just kind of mount it up a little bit. do what I call hand troweling, just so where when water does get off this, it's going to run off. And then I'm going to cover this with just a little bit of damp soil because I really don't care about the finished look, but we are going to get below freezing tonight, and I just want to protect it from cracking. Alright, so it's the next morning and the concrete on these uprights is cured enough to where I can move on to the next step of this process, and that is going to be leveling all of these out to where it's just a nice continuous line. The reason these are such varying lengths is just because, as I probably mentioned at the beginning of this, I'm using all scrap steel that I had, and there's just a ton of different lengths. So anyway, what I have done is gotten a nice straight piece of steel, and I clamped it into place. You can see it right there, and I got it as perfectly level as I could. And then I have run a string from that post all the way to that post, and then the next step is just to mark these off at that level. And then I need to water all this grass down because I'm going to be cutting most of these probably with my angle iron or angle grinder, and I don't want to start a fire. So one of the things you may be wondering about regarding the steel that I'm using in this project is what part of the drive-in movie theater did this steel serve as? Well, these pieces are 3" by 3" by 1/4 inch thick steel angle, and they served as the purlins that the movie theater screen was attached to. I believe, just off the top of my head, that it was something like 60 or 70 feet tall. And basically all of the panels of the movie theater screen were attached to these. And while they are super robust and very strong, you'll see that I am joining them together so that they essentially make a T-post, and there is a recessed portion on either side for the fence panels to kind of nest into. And while it is creating quite a bit of extra work, it'll definitely make something that I don't think is going to be falling down anytime soon. So once I get these pieces bolted together, I am going to start working on the top cap, and you can see that right here. This one includes a 45-degree angle, and that's because it is going to be nested on one of the corners of the goat enclosure. Now when it comes to prepping rusty metal for paint, I generally try to remove as much rust as I possibly can, almost to the point of getting the metal looking shiny and new again. But in the case of this project, there is simply too much rust and too many years of paint that I would have to remove, and it would just be one of those law of diminishing returns kind of things. So I'm opting to remove the very loose stuff and then use a rusty metal primer to sound the rust spots, as well as provide a good overall surface for the new paint to adhere to. And ultimately, I don't think the goats are going to care too much. Now the final stage of this project is probably the simplest, but it was the most time consuming, and that is attaching the panels. And the reason for this is because I'm using hardware to attach these panels, carriage bolts with washers. And because this is 1/4 inch thick steel, it takes a bit of effort to go through. For all of the lower sections, I'm using 1/4 inch threaded carriage bolts. And you'll see me drill a 1/4 inch hole on the inside. And then on the outside, I'm taking a 5/16 bit and kind of rounded it out so the shoulder of the carriage bolt just barely fits in there, and then I just hammer it in place. That way it won't spin, and it'll just provide for a nice, tight, secure fitting. And then I just secure the washer on with a nut, and I think I did maybe 6 or 7 of these for each panel, and they are all in there pretty darn securely. And the very last part of this project had to do with solidifying the parts of the fence panels that didn't quite meet the ground level or didn't extend into the ground very far. And for that, I just rolled some chicken wire around almost all of the fence perimeter. And then I secured the chicken wire to the lower portion of the fence with some, I believe these are called hog nose pliers, and these are hog rings. But don't be dissuaded, these are not actual hog rings, it's just a construction term. And then I backfilled everything with dirt to about 6 inches to cover the fencing, as well as reduce the level of the dirt on the inside of the fence. So for any goats that happen to be really good jumpers, I want to keep that 4.5 to 5 feet level as high as I possibly can. And then at some point I will be putting an electric fence on the outside perimeter of this fence, for mostly for predators, but I will do that in a later video. It's just like a playground, huh? All right, now show the access for the handle from the inside. Pretty easy?
Yep.
All right, guys, well, that is pretty much going to do it for the fence portion of this whole goat project. Hopefully it was interesting. Maybe it gave you some ideas. I will say, however, if you don't happen to have a bunch of scrap steel you are trying to utilize, a much easier route would just to simply put some T-posts in the ground and fix the horse or hog or utility panels to the T-posts, and you'll probably have this done in a day versus over a week that I've spent on this. But I am happy with the result, and I will say I am still trying to keep a wife that is slightly hesitant towards goats interested in the project by having something that I think has turned out to be pretty nice looking. As for the next project within this whole goat project, you may have noticed in that corner of the yard there is no horse panels. Because that is going to be a little goat barn. I kind of have it loosely framed up with the same steel that I've built this with, and that will be the next portion of this project. I'm going to call it a goat barn or something like that. And one thing before I let you go, I did mention in the last video that I may borrow some goats from my neighbors so that you could see this whole goat pen in action with some real live footage of goats in there. But I started thinking about the logistics of it and getting them over here, and the fact that they are recently pregnant and they've started developing little bellies. So I just kind of ruled against that. It's just going to be too much of a thing to bring them over here. But I may add in some clips of footage because our neighbors that have the goats is also the neighbors that my daughter is best friends with their daughter. So anyway, the babies that are in those goats' bellies may end up here at some point anyway. But anyway, I just wanted to clear that up in case you were waiting for the official goat footage of being in the pen. But as always, I appreciate you guys watching. Give it a thumbs up if you like this. And we will see you next time.
I gotta make room for them. Start going. Start going. You need your treats. Come on, guys. Here, you get one. No, what about Maple? Maple likes me a lot. What is he? Yeah!
Do they like getting in the middle?
Yeah. Start in the middle.
Video.
Let's start finding this one. Hit the camera with your face, guys.